You sit it across the table from your wife and you have a discussion. You say, I think we need to sell the kitchen table.
Yeah. and we were both on board here. When you go through something like cancer, I mean, nothing else mattered. Yeah, everything just seems so like unimportant.
You're listening to How I Grow This, exploring stories of gardeners from across the globe as we learn from their biggest tips and tricks to some of the things not to do. I'm your host, Luke Hammond.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the How I Grow This podcast. I'm your host, Luke Hammond, and I'm joined with a good friend of mine. We've actually met about 4 years ago, I think, at the Rory Feek Homesteading Festival, Jason Contreras. I don't know if that's where we met, but then I went and visited another friend, Casey Ostwick, in. I gotta see your farm. The guest today is Jason Contreras. You probably know him as Sow The Land on YouTube. So you're looking forward to a great episode. But before we do that, I want to just make sure that you jump over, if you've been enjoying this, and hit the like or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. It really helps move the show forward in the algorithm. Without any further ado, here's Jason with Sow The Land. Jason, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Luke, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Man, absolutely. Jason, I think a lot of people kind of see your channel and they see what you're doing and they immediately think, this guy's just a craftsman that was able to then turn his channel into YouTube. But that's not really where your story started and why you got into homesteading and building things and doing this creation. So can you kind of walk us through your story? Because it's a pretty gripping story of what got you into this.
Yeah. So let's see. We've been doing homesteading, farming stuff since 2016. So it's coming up on 10 years, which is crazy to think about. Mm-hmm. And so currently we're on 14 acres, me, my wife, and now she's 14-year-old daughter. We started this thing when she was 4. That's crazy. But
Yeah.
So how we started though, we were we're born and raised and lived in Los Angeles area, me and my wife. We met in high school and, lived there our whole lives and, just kind of standard American diet, I guess you could say, growing up pretty normal and in the city. But then our life changed when I had just turned 30 and I got diagnosed with cancer. And it was Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that's the reason why we live this lifestyle now. Like, I honestly think if I hadn't got cancer, I probably would not know that this whole other life could exist for us. I think we lived a completely different lifestyle back then, pre-cancer. So it's like I think of my life in like 2 stages: before cancer and after cancer.
Yeah.
So, my wife, she was in the fashion industry and I worked in an office. I was a computer drafter. And, I did that for 17 years and my wife, she had her career. So, we had our thing. And, so when I got cancer, it was just kind of like a huge shock. And, I did 6 months of chemo and that was it. The doctor said, if you're going to get any kind of good cancer, that would be it. I don't know if that made me feel better, but, so it was during that time where we started questioning stuff. It was just like, man, why is this happening? Should we be eating differently? Is it because we eat bad? Is it because, all these things you start questioning. And it was during that time we kind of slowly started to, read labels on when you go to the grocery store, see what's in back of the labels. Started figuring out, like, should I be, cutting out processed foods, cutting out sodas and all that kind of thing. And, that's kind of where you start, don't eat fast food and, kind of go from there. And then I think it was, it was like 6 months. So it was during that time where we're just kind of figuring all that stuff out. And then after I was in remission, it was like my last oncology appointment. I lost all my hair and everything. And it was, she said, yo, you're in remission now, you no more cancer. So I was like, okay, great. So in my mind, I was like, okay, what like I feel like I needed to do something. Like I was asking her, like, what do I need to do now? Like, it's such a traumatic experience going through all of that and going through all the PET scans and CAT scans and getting poked with needles all the time and just getting dripped this chemo poison in my veins and just all that is huge traumatic on everybody. And I always just thought, well, maybe I need to take vitamins or maybe I need to, I don't know what. And she just said, no, you don't need to do anything, just go back to your normal life. And like nothing like it didn't happen. And I just thought, I mean, looking back at that now, I think we were kind of wanting her to tell me how to live my life. Like I wanted her to tell me like, okay, you need to do this from now on. And she did it. And she was just like, no, you don't do anything. That's it. You're good to go. And, go on your merry way. And it was just kind of like that. Really?
That
Like,
doesn't seem right. Yeah.
yeah, it just didn't make sense. It felt like I needed something else. And so, I think for a minute there, I tried to go back to our normal life, just kind of went back to normal. My hair grew back and I was feeling pretty good. And I also felt like I had this like second chance at life. I didn't know what that would look like or what, but and it was during that time too where we started figuring out what's healthy. And it was after she told us that we realized that we have to take control of our own health and try to figure it out ourselves of what we should be eating and cutting out of our diet and trying to be healthy. And so, shortly about a year after that, we had our daughter and, we bought a nice 4-bedroom house and, we kind of tried to go back to our normal life really I think it was like 1 or 2 years after that. But then also at the same time, trying to eat healthy and figuring that out. And so I think it came to a point where we're like, okay, if we really want to know what's in our food, then we got to start growing it. And so we had a little backyard and I made some raised garden beds and, bought some plant starts and threw them in the ground. And, we never grew up around any of that, like not even a little bit. I don't think we ever knew anyone who had a tomato plant in their backyard. Didn't have any friends that grew food or nothing. And so it was just kind of really foreign to us. And we try to figure that out and see what that looked like for us. And after you grow that first tomato plant, you're hooked.
Yeah.
You eat that first tomato, you're hooked. You're like, man, I can never buy a store-bought tomato again.
Right.
So it was from there it kind of snowballed. And it was like we'd kind of joke around really of would it be cool to have a little bit more land and we could have chickens and maybe we could grow our own meat. And it was kind of like a joke that we would, say, how that could happen. We live, in the city, like just outside of LA, like there's no land around here. And so, after figuring that out, we started canning some stuff. And I mean, this was in pre-2016. It was like 2010 to 2016.
Okay. When did you get diagnosed with cancer? What year was that?
It was 2010.
Okay. 2010, you got diagnosed with cancer. You have a 6-month battle with chemo, all the kind of stuff. Your life is turned upside down. And then they release you back on the streets, if you will, and say, hey, go back to work, go back to your life. Everything's fine. And you just felt like deep within, hey, this isn't right. And then you started doing some studying somewhere in there and you're like, what led you to, I'm going to change my food and my diet? Where did that come from? Did you read something? Did you see something? Did they talk about it? What made you think, hey, maybe the diet is a big portion of my health down the road?
Yeah, I think we just started reading blogs and books. I think this was kind of pre-YouTube, I would say.
Totally. Yeah. I was like, I think Instagram came out in 2011 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. I think we pretty much just had Instagram maybe with a pretty picture,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
pre-video um, shorts and reels and all that stuff, and homestead YouTuber.
Right.
um, but yeah, I think we were just kind of reading different things, and I think kind of common sense too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we all know in back of our minds, like, yeah, I shouldn't be having this, soda or going to this drive-through for fast food, or having these frozen meals. And in our minds, we're like, we don't eat that bad. But then looking back, like, yeah, we did.
Mm.
And now I don't know. I'm not gonna say that's the reason I got cancer. I don't think so. But who knows? But at least I feel like a starting point of trying to feel better and trying to feel good. So I really think it was just kind of common sense, maybe, and just um, reading other books and stuff. And we kind of we found Weston A. Price book,
Mm-hmm.
Sally Fallon, kind of those books, and reading those, and really, I guess, got a experience from those books, and trying to figure out like what we should be eating and cutting out. And that's when I
Mm-hmm.
kind of found like the term pasture raised or grass
Mm.
fed. Previously I didn't know what
Mm-hmm.
that was. I
Right.
remember Googling that stuff and like, what is pasture raised chicken? I didn't know what that was. And so, yeah, from there, we knew we wanted to grow some of our food, and we would joke around and be like, hey, it would be cool to have some land and to maybe raise some chickens, and do that. And then, after we started talking about this stuff, and we started questioning our own careers, like, does my job make me happy? And it wasn't. I was sitting in front of a computer, sitting down all day, and I was doing the same thing over and over again for 17 years. And that's what I went to school for. And my wife went to college. And I think growing up, I was always taught, you go to college and you find one good job. You go get that one good job and you're set.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you find the house and you get the 2 cars and you get the big screen TV. And then next thing you know, you have all this debt.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we did. And so after we had our daughter, my wife, she eventually quit her career to stay at home, be a stay-at-home mom. And so I had my job. And so we started to also think minimally, um, trying to live more minimally. We eventually got rid of our one car, went down to one car, trying to get rid of our debts. We had massive student loans, and, got rid of our TV and all this stuff. And then next thing you know, I mean, this was a matter of 6 years,
Right.
of all of this happening. And figuring out how to grow our food, joking around about finding new land,
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of all of our stuff that we don't use or need. And eventually we had nothing in our house. Like, we were getting rid of furniture, and
Wow.
joking around of like, one day when we become farmers, we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to need all this furniture, or, we talked about maybe moving into a tiny home somewhere on a 1 acre or something. And so at one point, I think we got rid of couches, lamps, nothing on our walls. And so we had our kitchen table. Pretty much that's the only thing we had left was our kitchen table. And I said, if we would get rid of our kitchen table, we're pretty serious here, I think. um, and so we sold our kitchen table, and shortly thereafter, we sold our house, our first house that we bought.
So, so you narrow everything down, and you're kind of like embracing like this minimalist lifestyle, which was kind of before it was. I mean, now there's so many books on minimalism and clearing the clutter and training. So you're definitely like ahead of the curve, if you will, in your lifestyle. And you get all the way down to the kitchen table. What even gets you that far? Like, were you guys relationally feeling stronger and better, and like, was life turning around, or were you really kind of focused on the target of, hey, we're actually going to be narrowing down everything because we want to build a different life for ourselves on a homestead or a farm? Because you're saying you're joking around about being farmers, and I'm assuming this is where the garden in the back is kind of begun. You've planted containers and some raised beds in the back in LA, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We had, I think, like 8 raised garden beds
Okay.
that we grew out of, and trying to figure that out.
Okay. So this minimalism thing has just got me totally, it's so cool and a curiosity hearing that. And then you sit it across the table from your wife and you have a discussion. You say, I think we need to sell the kitchen table.
Yeah. and we were both on board here. It wasn't like it was my idea and I had to convince her, or it was her idea. I mean, we were both talking about this together, and we were both
Sure.
like, yeah, we both were joking about it at first, but
Yeah.
but we're both on board. And I think when you go through something like cancer, I mean, nothing else mattered, honestly.
Everything seems small.
Yeah, everything just seems so like unimportant. And like,
Wow.
we collected a lot of things. My wife, she was in the fashion industry, so she had mounds of clothes, like designer clothes, that she got rid of. Like, she was like, I don't need this big giant walk-in closet of clothes. Like, what am I doing? So stuff like that, and like things that we collect, and it just didn't matter. And of like, one day we're gonna be farmers, where we don't need these designer clothes, stuff like that. And so yeah, the plan was, and after that kitchen table, it was like we were serious about it. We're like, okay, we're gonna figure this out, and we didn't know what that looked like. I still had my job, my comfortable job, and so the plan was, we're gonna sell the house, we're gonna continue to try to pay off some debts. We just had a lot of student loans, and then like all our family lived in that whole area that we lived. It was easy to be like, okay, we're gonna move in with mom for a year. Our house, move in with mom for a year, save up, and figure out where we're gonna live. In doing that, it definitely felt like we were going backwards, moving back in with mom. I didn't want to do that, but we had a goal.
Yeah.
And we still didn't know if that was even possible. So within that year, we kind of looked around at properties, and initially we wanted to stay in California because that's where what we knew. That's all our family and friends. Never lived anywhere else. And very soon we realized that we need to be billionaires to buy land out there, which we were not, definitely not. It was just so expensive, and there was nothing over there, and we just kept on searching and vacationing and going up north. We were going to Arizona just to look at different things, New Mexico, and then we knew a couple. We kind of met through social media actually. I think they were posting some stuff on Instagram, and they would tell us about the Asheville, North Carolina area. And, the furthest east we've ever been was New Mexico. So we're like, we got to at least go on vacation and see what it's like out there. We didn't know how the weather was or what. And so we did. We went for a week to Asheville, and we just kind of hung out and didn't look at properties at that time. We were just kind of seeing if we even like the area,
right?
Seeing how it is, and man, we fell in love with it. It was so much different than California. There was a lot of like-minded people doing homesteading, small-scale farming, market gardeners. I mean, so many good food, farmers markets. I mean, it was everything that we got into, and stuff that we could not find living in California. And so we went back home, and I was like, man, I think that's where we need to be. And it was also affordable. It was also more affordable than California and anywhere else that we had seen. And so I think 6 months went by, and I was like, we're still living with mom, and I still had my job, my comfortable job, and I didn't know what I was going to do there. And so I said, the only way we're going to really know is I need to go back. I need to go back and look for properties because, we really didn't know areas, we didn't know anything, is it a good area? Is it a good, how is it? And so I went 6 months after that. I flew by myself, and my wife, she trusted me enough to go. And it was like a weekend. I saw like 15 properties. I went with a realtor, and because, prior to that, I would look on Craigslist, right? Like at properties, and I would look at online realtors platforms, and you would look, but it's like, honestly, I don't have no idea where this house is.
Right.
You got to go look. And so it was like a weekend, 15 different properties, one after another, boom, boom, boom. And I would just send pictures to my wife and be like, hey, what about this one? What about that one? And we had a criteria of what we wanted, and we weren't looking at anything spectacular. I mean, initially, I think we had this romantic ideas of, wraparound porch, pond,
yeah, all
hundreds
the
of
things.
acres.
Yeah.
And honestly, we had savings, but, we made some money off the house that we sold, but we didn't have a whole lot, I felt, to do like something huge.
At that point, were you debt free? Had you worked your way out of the debt, or did you still carry a little student loan?
No, we were not debt free. Even when we made the move, we still were not debt free.
Okay.
So, the last property I saw and I saw some amazing places, like really rundown places, and that's kind of what we were looking for, something run down that we could fix up. And so, last place I saw was 1.5 acres. No one was living on it, which is just a different time in 2016. It was vacant for a whole year, and it had a single wide mobile home on it that no one lived in, and it was pretty close to town, like pretty close to the city there, which I wanted because, again, like I'm assuming I would have to go into work somewhere or find work. Of course I would have to work, but it had a creek running through it. It had some flat areas to start a garden, and that seemed like, everything but the mobile home, right? Like, I think we're like, we don't want to live in a mobile home, but we thought of it as, we're just going to buy this, and it's going to teach us. Like, this is not going to be our forever home. I think people get caught up in like, we're going to move to the country, and it's going to be our retirement forever home. Like, this is it. Yep. But for us, it was not that. It was just going to be like a starter homestead. It's going to teach us how to even homestead. It's going to even, I mean, do we really want to do this? Like, it's going to, like, is this really going to make us happy or not? We weren't sure. So even if it was going to teach us if we even like doing this kind of thing. So we ended up buying it. I still didn't have enough money to buy it outright, so I had a mortgage on it, even though it was like super cheap, because we still had student loans. And it was one of those things where we had enough saving, like before I bought that place, we had enough savings of I could pay off our student loans. Boom, we'd be debt free, right? 100% debt free.
Yeah.
Or we could use some of that money to buy this property.
There's always the or, right?
And it sounded more funner to buy this property than to pay off my student loans, because I felt like we would have nothing to buy a property with, right? Like, we would have to save for another 5, 10, or who knows when. And the momentum was there. Like, we were going, and
you sold the kitchen table. I mean, you had momentum.
Yeah, we kept going, and momentum was there, and I feel like we kept on getting these green lights of like, go, 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 go. And that was another thing. Like, it's like, I'm not going to let the debt thing stop us. Like, okay, we have this debt, like, so what? We're just gonna keep going, and and that's what we did, and we ended up buying that place, still living with mom, and then it was like, oh, we bought this place now. Now what? Okay, what's the next step? Okay, I got to figure out a job.
Yeah. So okay, so you it's a 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And you make an offer on this 1.5 acre house with a mobile on it, and you're like, okay, we're gonna move across the country. I got to find a job. Where'd you start looking? Did you start looking in the?
Well, I started looking to like an office job of what I did, what I knew, computer drafting, and I looked online, and I wasn't living in Asheville. We weren't living in Asheville. I was still in California, so I was kind of looking online and putting applications, and I lived 3,000 miles away. Why would they hire me?
Well, you just bought a farm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't find anything, and it was like we really wanted to move. We were ready to go, and so just the thought of, you know what, I could just quit. I could just quit my job and we could just go. Like, that is an option. And honestly, that was the first time I felt like a grown up.
Whoa.
Of finally saying, I don't have to ask my mom. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't have to ask permission to do this. And so that's what I did. I put in my 2 weeks to my comfortable job that, I left Christmas vacations and 401ks and bonuses and a gas card and paid healthcare too.
Yeah. And not like a job that you've been at for a little bit. You left a job that you were at for 17 years.
Yeah.
Right. At that point.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah. It was a good place. I mean, there were good people to work with. It wasn't like a horrible place to work at. I mean, it was great. Pay was great. Everything was good. It's just, we had a different goal, and that was the only way I felt like we could leave, if I just left. And so we quit. We packed up the things that we did save, and we left. And it was like, if it's meant to be, we'll make it work. I still get emotional thinking about it, because it was a huge, huge leap of faith for us, of trying to figure that out, and or just to get to that mindset of like, let's go, like, it'll be okay, our family was super supportive, and they still are. They maybe didn't understand it completely,
right?
But they just wanted us to be happy, and they were very supportive about it. And yeah, we left, and we really didn't have any friends out here. We didn't have family out here. We hardly knew anything. And we were just going to figure it out. And so, plus we took their grandchild away, their 4-year-old grandchild away. So that was hard too. And so, so yeah, I didn't know what we had, from the sale of our house, we had 6 months worth of savings. We had that. So it was like, if I couldn't find a job within 6 months, we would be okay. Cell phone could be paid for,
right.
House could be paid for,
You could always go to Home Depot and get a job, is what you're thinking, right? Or do something. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, man, at the worst, I don't know, I could just go work at delivering pizzas or something. I don't know. I mean, I was willing to. Also, my goal was not only to find land to grow our own food. That was one goal. But another goal was to figure out how to work for ourselves, and to not work for anybody and not go back to an office job.
And so is this where you came up with the social media, Sow the Land idea right there? Was that like on the car ride across the...
It was actually before we left.
Okay.
I knew that, I had started doing, so I was always like drawing plans for people, right? How to put something together. It was always on paper, on a computer. I never really put things together myself, like build something with my hands. And so prior to we left, that 6 years, I thought woodworking might be some fun thing for me to do because it was something I was always kind of interested in. So I took like an adult education class on woodworking, like basic woodworking skills. And so I did that for like a couple years, and just to build that up for myself. Because I didn't know what I was going to do for work, and I thought maybe this might be something I could do, woodworking. And I also knew maybe social media would be the way to sell things. So I was like, we need to come up with a name. So we kind of came up with Sow The Land. And at first we didn't spell Sow The Land with SOW. We spelled it with a SEUEW, like sewing. Because my wife, she knew how to sew. Like, she was in the fashion industry.
Right. Yeah.
And we thought, well, maybe that might be something we do. Maybe she sews and I'm growing food, it's like you're sowing the land, kind of thing.
Yeah.
We got rid of that E and made it O eventually because people started asking us if we sew clothes. And we never did. So I changed it back to the O. So
yeah.
So yeah, we kind of came up with the name beforehand because I knew that might be something that we do. Again, we weren't sure what we were going to do.
Right.
I knew that we wanted to raise pastured poultry because I got a hold of Joel Salatin's book, Pastured Poultry Profits, before we left. And I read that thing like quick, and it was just like an eye opener for me. And it kind of got me going like, yeah, we could do this. Like, even I took 2 chicken processing workshops before we left, and we're at Primal Pastures.
Yeah, right there in SoCal. Yeah.
Yeah, they were close to us. That's when they were kind of just starting. They were on 1.5 acres they started on.
Yeah.
They were a huge influence on us too, because I saw how they started and what they were doing on 1.5 acres, and I thought, oh, maybe that's all we need is 1.5 acres.
Right, and they catapulted fast.
Yeah,
like very fast. So you're like, hey, maybe this is scalable here.
Yeah. Right, and that's what I had initially kind of was thinking of. Maybe we could be like the Primal Pastures of North Carolina.
Yeah, the East Coast. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge influence on that part of it. And so that's what we wanted to do, raise chickens for meat and grow a garden, and do it on that 1.5 acres and try to live minimally and not go back to an office job and just be a family trying to work together. We've been doing that ever since. I never have been back to an office job since then. And it was really just, we moved, and it was like, I remember pulling up to that house and be like, okay, it took a lot to get here. Right? Like, all these things had to happen for us to pull up to this house right now.
Yeah.
And it was we were on fire for it. We're like, both of us were just all in. And I think that was the key too of doing, both of us had to be all in on this life of wanting this. Now, it was about saying yes to everything. It's like, we need to meet people, when we first moved in. And so we would hang out at farmers markets. Or we found a church early on, which was good. So we met a lot of people there, farmers markets. I volunteered at market garden, little small market gardeners, farms, because, we didn't know what people grew out here. We didn't know what grew or the weather kind of thing. So I volunteered for a couple of years I worked for free, worked for maybe a CSA box a week. And I learned a ton just by volunteering my time and how these market gardeners grow stuff. And so I learned a lot that way, and took what I learned to our own garden at that early on of trying to figure that out. And so yeah, we came up and we kept going back to our why are we here? Like, that kind of kept us going of like, okay, let's start growing food.
Mm-hmm.
And, tilling up the land when we first moved, and it was just all grass, and started planting food, started growing it from there. And from there, it kept growing.
So at this point, you had grown for nearly 6 years in a pretty large amount of raised beds in California, in Southern California, no less, kind of the ideal conditions of growing. So many
I know
people
that now, but
yeah, you're struggling there and you're like, wow. And then you move to Carolina. What were some of the initial differences that you started seeing just right off the bat in terms of the health of your crops and what you were doing? And let's kind of pivot in that direction and talk specifically about the California garden versus the North Carolina garden.
yeah, when we first moved out here, it's so green out here. There's a stream going through your property
Mm-hmm.
like all year long. And, California, there was a lot of drought. Like it didn't rain.
Mm-hmm.
People were putting in AstroTurf in their front lawns when we left, and getting fined for watering too much kind of thing. So we had everything on a drip system in California on our raised beds, which is super helpful when you work, because you could just put it on a timer. But when we moved out here, I remember my neighbor at the time, he was an older guy that lived here his whole life. And I'd be like, how do you water your garden? Because he had a little garden. He's like, water? I don't water my garden ever. And I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just so funny. And he was right. In that first year, we'd never watered our garden. Like, it rained enough to water it. But then at the same time, we realized if it rains too much, then that could be bad. Like for the tomatoes and stuff like that, or pumpkins, watermelon and stuff like that. So that was a huge thing that we realized that maybe we need a high tunnel,
Mm.
And then I made like just a DIY, really cheap high tunnel. When we first moved, I had one of the market gardeners that I would volunteer at gave me a used plastic, high tunnel plastic for a
Mm-hmm.
greenhouse because they weren't using it. So I was like, oh, I'll take that. And then I kind of made my own makeshift greenhouse. So I mean, and also in California, we're doing raised beds, so it was kind of more of the was it square foot gardening
Mm-hmm.
in a raised beds. And so when we moved out here, we started to go into the like more of the no-till garden with the hilled up rows, and then we would put maybe wood chips in the aisles. And then we started doing it that way because that's what the farm that I worked at or volunteered at, that's how they would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of mimicking what they were doing, and then just letting the rain water everything. And we hardly watered. But over the years, I mean, now we water now. I don't know if the weather's changing or what, or we're just more mindful of trying to control the water. Now it's different, but back then on that 1.5 acres, yeah, we never watered anything.
Mm-hmm. So are you noticing that the groundwater, it may be drying out more through kind of those summer months in North Carolina where it dries up from July through September is kind of your dry season there. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. Some years, I mean, I'd say most years, there is definitely a drought. So definitely we do have droughts, which I think it seemed like the first few years of living out here. I don't know if that's just me not realizing it, because for coming from California, like I'm like, yeah, this is not a drought,
Right.
But the first few years, people would say we're in a drought, but I didn't understand it because I felt like it was raining all the time.
Well, I think the difference is when you have so much plant growth, you've got all these grasses and all these huge deciduous trees and oaks and, all the stuff, 2 weeks without rain, most of that moisture is just like it's been it's into the plant, it's into the foliage, and then you're like, wow, it's starting to kind of brown a little bit, and then when you're on the West Coast, like Arizona, California, like, well, it hasn't rained for 6 months. I guess we're probably due. It should, and and out there, everything would be dead. Oaks would be falling over. It'd just be
Right.
a train wreck. Yeah, fires and so I think there is a little bit of those eyes, but I do think that there's probably something to you just kind of being more aware to the watering that's taking place in the garden. And I guess specifically if you're growing under plastic too, but you've always kind of grown, once you built that first little high tunnel, you've been doing both in plastic or in polyculture under tunnels and then outside as well.
Yes.
And you're not watering the same.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Let's go into that a little bit. This first high tunnel that you built, you got the plastic, you got the skin from another market gardener. How did you build that tunnel? Was it like 1-inch PVC on 20 foot that you bent and created about a 10-foot span, or how big was that? What did you do?
Yeah, I think it might have been, geez, I don't know, maybe 15, maybe 20 feet long and maybe 10 feet wide. Yeah, I just used PVC pipe. And again, like I got this idea from the market gardener that I volunteered at. I mean, they had a bunch of these, like just DIY, just scrap lumber, just putting something together, and they were growing, amazing tomatoes in these things. And I'm like, wow, you don't need a fancy high tunnel to be growing this stuff. And they were taking everything to market and doing pretty well. And they've been doing it for a number of years with these same high tunnels. And so I was like, man, I'm just going to kind of build the same thing at my place. So yeah, it was just kind of scrap lumber that we threw together. And again, like at that time, I didn't have a full-time job. Like we were just trying to scrap and make it work of, everything. I was saying yes to all kinds of jobs, just kind of handyman stuff at that time. So, every dollar was seen, of trying to do it. And so, getting that plastic for free and getting, certain lumber for free and, trying to do that. And I remember growing in that little high tunnel for the first time. And, at first we weren't watering anything with the outside garden, but then you grow that high tunnel, you're like, oh, I guess we got to water in there now. And then I got to run this hose like 300 feet from the house, because we didn't have no water out there. And eventually I guess my Southern California mindset kicked in and says, you know what, I need to start saving water. I need to utilize all this water coming from the sky and use it to save and distribute in my garden. Because even to this day, I mean, I'm sure people save water out here, but I hardly see it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me because I'm like, there's so much water coming from the sky. Like everybody should be saving this water. Like even if to not run hoses everywhere, like it's so important. Like, and I hardly see anybody doing it.
Yeah, it's very true. Very, very true. Let's dive into, you talked about the DIY tunnel, and now, on YouTube, you've just put up, or at least in this last year, right? Beginning of this year, you put up a Haven tunnel, which is a tunnel manufactured by Farmer's Friend that is a Gothic style roll-up sides. Everything comes in this kit, right? I think you only have like 2 cuts or something like that is how they've designed and engineered that, or
I mean, maybe that, if that, I mean, you don't have to cut anything. I mean, it came with the wood for the bottom. It came with everything. Yeah, it's a 72 foot long, 16 feet wide high tunnel, and it's been great. I mean, it took a little bit. I mean, I pretty much just built it myself, like a kit. I mean, it took a number of months to build it myself with everything else going on, but it was definitely doable because you don't have to cut anything.
Yeah. And what did you notice between maybe this year in managing that tunnel and venting that tunnel and all the workload associated with growing in a caterpillar tunnel for the first time that's maybe not a DIY kit?
Yeah, it definitely gets hotter in there for sure. Like we have all the sides up pretty much year round. I mean, we're in Western North Carolina, so it's not too extreme here, you know. Even the summer, we do get a lot of humidity, but it's not compared to, you know, other places. It's not that
Yeah.
bad. So, you know, I learned I learned a lot from that first 1.5 acres that we grew at, you know, and that the DIY high tunnel. Like I recommend people to start there.
Mhm.
Like, don't get the big old high tunnel first. Like, just make a scrappy DIY high tunnel and learn from there. Like, that's going to teach you a lot.
Mhm.
You know, as far as how you want to roll up the sides, you know, definitely the weed factor. The weeds are a battle all the time. So the property that we have now, right where I have that high tunnel, it was a old horse property.
Mhm.
So the area that I have the high tunnel, it's the flattest part of the place that we have because that used to be a horse arena. So that ground is super compacted. Um, when we first moved here, there was nothing growing on that thing. That looked like a moonscape. Um, and so we had to bring in soil because there ain't no way we're gonna till up that part. It's like hard as a rock.
Mhm.
It was really bad. And so we had to bring in soil in the high tunnel, even on our outside garden. But mainly the high tunnel for sure needed soil. This year we started incorporating weed fabric because we grew in it last year and the weeds just eventually just took over. And it's just, you know, me, my wife, and my daughter. I mean, it's just us. I mean, we could literally pull weeds all day, every day.
Mhm. Mhm.
And nobody has time for that.
Yeah.
Um, and so we incorporated the landscape fabric, which
Mhm.
has been a lot. It's been helpful, super helpful. There's still weeds, but at least it's a little bit more manageable
Right.
with the fabric. And then, you know, learning that if you get a high tunnel, you got to figure out how to water it. I had to run a trench hydrant in the high tunnel. And then eventually we did use, I think this year was the first year we used drip irrigation,
Okay.
which it's kind of like a love-hate relationship with drip irrigation. I don't like all the plastic hoses everywhere because
Sure.
I guess I was either like do drip irrigation or do the overhead sprinklers.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I was like, because we're on a well system, so I was like, drip irrigation is probably better to conserve water.
Mhm.
And I kind of knew how to do the drip irrigation since I did it in California. Um, and that's another thing too, like finding all these parts and pieces, like for drip irrigation in California, you could just go to Home Depot and buy it.
Mhm.
Out here, nobody does it. Like I can't just go to Home Depot and buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. People. Yeah. Yeah.
I got to go online and buy it.
Mhm.
And that could be kind of a pain because you kind of have to know what you're looking for or buy like a kit or something, which is super helpful.
Yeah.
Um, because, you know, it's just harder to return stuff
Yep.
online that kind of thing, or you got to buy extra parts just in case one part breaks.
Yep.
So that part is kind of a learning curve there of trying to figure it out. But.
Right. Yeah. Irrigation is such a hurdle, and it's almost like there's, I would say like the information overwhelm and like the product overwhelm. If you start looking at an irrigation like magazine, or you open up some of these irrigation options out there, from big farms to backyard farms to, there is infinite options and possibilities and sizes and tubing and friction and thickness and, everything is like, I didn't know, there's not that in and out California mentality of like, I just want to double, right?
Right. It's so crazy.
Yeah, it's not simple. But once you get into a system or a rhythm of what you've used in the past, you kind of always land there. You're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And so what would you suggest, having played around with the easy to access stuff in the West Coast and Home Depots, to what you've purchased now online? Where would you direct a newbie gardener for choosing irrigation, maybe if they haven't in the past?
I would try to find like a kit.
Mm-hmm.
Like Farmer's Friend is great for that, I think. I mean, they have kits, irrigation kits too. Because it's all there and they explain the stuff pretty well, as far as how to put everything together.
Right. It definitely fits really well for your context where you've got the tunnel from them. And so they've got kits that are designed for your tunnel.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's easy. I just match this up. Right. This is my tunnel. And then I can cut 4 lines of drip and I'm good to go, or 8 or whatever you wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there you could learn a lot from that. And then if you build another one or if something breaks, you're like, okay, I didn't necessarily need that part when I bought the kit. And it kind of like, you learn other things, or like maybe you could find it somewhere else, and learn that way.
Yeah. I want to ask this question, because you were so accelerated into this learning process. What are some of the best ways that homesteaders or would-be homesteaders, or gardeners can accelerate their learning?
I would say try to find, I think in-person workshops are great for that. Or finding a neighbor that does it, or like volunteering at a market garden or something like that, or volunteering your time for work for free at a farm. I think that would be super helpful. Or even working at a farm,
right,
for like a year or 6 months or whatever, part-time, and just learn a ton through that way. I think that would be helpful. I think like a workshop would be good, from learning from somebody who's already doing it. Like a hands-on workshop. I think you can accelerate things a lot faster than just watching a YouTube video. Plus, I think it can give you a bit more confidence when you're physically looking at something, or physically looking at a person showing you how to do something. That can be super helpful. And then I think like a workshop is, or volunteering at somewhere, that's like the final step of like, after you do that, then you could go to your own place and do it. Like that's like the final step there. Like after you watch all the videos and the books, and then you take the workshop or in-person something, and then you go home and do it.
Yeah, I think for me that equivalent, I think one of the last things in like my farming journey, of maybe it was fear, maybe it was something, but it was beekeeping. It was like, you're you go to a conference and you attend that session, and you buy a book and you read the book, and then you kind of buy another book and you read the book, and then you and you're like, there's something there that's like kind of holding you back because of, in the case of bees, intimidation factor. They're like, you feel like there's some risks there. And then finally, I think I was in a conversation on the phone with Kaylee with the Homestead,
Yeah.
And she's like, just do it, Luke. Like, just do it. You've go and buy a nuke and put it in, like, just do it. And it was like, oh, like that is the step. I need to just go and do it and
Right.
and minimize all that fear, minimize the fear of like the investment of the money, and figure out the best ways to make it as cheap as possible or least expensive as possible, and view it as an investment and go into my education that way in being a beekeeper. It's like, shout out to Kaylee. Thank you so much for pushing me off off
the cliff.
The cliff of indecision.
The bee cliff, yeah.
Right? Yeah. What would be your I'm just seeing this theme here because you described this as soon as you left California, and you said, I'm an adult now. Like I can make this decision. I have the autonomy over my life. What kind of encouragement can you give people from wherever they're at to push them off of that cliff of indecision that they're teetering on?
Yeah, that's it's hard. It's definitely that fear of the unknown. But I mean, we say, go take workshops and read books and all of that, but like, you're really not going to know how to do something unless you really do it yourself. Because that book you read or that video you saw or that workshop you took, that's the way that person's teaching does it. That probably not going to be the way you do it, because every land is different. Everybody's situation is different. And like that beekeeper that you might have saw, like they do things differently. You'll get the bees and you'll be like, oh yeah, that didn't work for me. Like, why am I doing it this way? That's the way you were taught, but like your situation is just going to be different. And so there's really nothing like hands-on learning in your own backyard. And that's how you're going to learn. I mean, there's going to be times where you're going to fail. I mean, we got some bees, and the thing about bees is you can't contain them with an electric net.
Nope.
They just fly away.
Yep.
But I think you just have to. I know that's like kind of a weird answer, because you're like, you just do it. You just do it. And I never used to like those answers, because I'm like, well, how do you do it? How do you do it?
Yeah.
But that's just what it is. I mean, you just have to do it and then figure it out. And I think us as humans, we're good at that. Yeah. I think you're good at that. Like we are good at figuring things out and making things work for yourself. And we're all smart. It's not rocket science. I keep going back to that. Like, this stuff's not rocket science. And then once you figure it out, you're like, it's kind of common sense in a way, like how to raise animals and grow food. I mean, it's like you're trying to not compete with nature or try to mimic nature as best as you can, really. And that's what's hard about it. But eventually, I think you just keep growing and keep learning every single day, and you'll figure things out what works for you.
Absolutely. Just keep growing wherever you're at. Take that next step. But I think you nailed it right there. We're trying to get over that root fear, whatever that fear is. And it's probably associated with some sort of failure. But that failure is that point of learning, right? It's that key point that we actually learn from failure a whole lot better and quicker than we learn from success. Right?
Yes, that's what's hard about it. Yes.
But oftentimes we have to go to the next level. We have to unlearn our past success, because that becomes our glass ceiling, right?
Yeah, it's like, when we grew, we're on that 1.5 acres for 6 years, and we grew a lot, and I felt like we outgrew that place. And we wanted to keep growing. We wanted to go to the next level. And so that's why we moved into the 14 acres now. So we've been here about 3 years, and going from 1.5 acres, like when we first moved at 1.5 acres, it might as well have been 100 acres because it felt so huge to us. And we're like, hey, there's no way we're going to outgrow this. But then we did. Then going to the 1.5 acres of the 14, it was, when we first moved to the 14, it was that same feeling of like, where do I start? This is overwhelming. Like, this seems like 1,000 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and we started close to the home. Like, we started with just raised beds. And like, we kind of started like you said, like, start with what you know, and then move out from there and keep growing from there. And you figure other things out, come along, and you just keep growing out.
Man, I love that. Jason, thank you so much for jumping on the How I Grow This podcast. Super fun to have you. Super fun to hear your story. And I know it's going to be an encouragement for a ton of people. And thank you for being willing to share your story, your cancer journey, and for documenting your steps all the way along the way in Sow the Land and the YouTube channel, and teaching so many people to maybe build something new, or try something different, or think differently, rainwater catching in an area that it's people aren't used to that.
Right.
What are you doing? Why are you wasting all that money on tanks and, in catchment? And it's like, no, let's do this. Let's try it.
I don't want to run hoses everywhere.
Yeah. I love it. Love it. Well, you've been listening to the How I Grow This podcast, which is brought to you by SeedTime. SeedTime is a garden planning software that helps you easily plan and stay on track in your garden. We've got all different innovative tools and AI resources for actually teaching you companion planting and making the art of planning your garden, when to plant, what to plant, as easy as we can. And so make sure you check out your free account today on seedtime.us. If you've been liking these episodes of the How I Grow This podcast, share it with your friends. It makes all the difference in pushing the algorithm forward and getting this out there to people. A couple things coming up. If you're interested in accelerated learning, we have the Seed to Harvest Summit, which is a digital summit, which we're going to have 16 different speakers walking you through all the steps of the garden, giving you inspiration. It's going to be huge. We've been putting that together for you. Everything from soil health to soil starts to irrigation to choosing your right tunnel to disease and pests. Everything's going to be included in that summit, and you won't want to miss it. It's coming out February 1st through the 5th, so make sure you sign up for that. And without further ado, Jason, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun.
All right.